Well, greetings everybody. Happy Friday. This is Casey with HomeSmart Realty Partners here in Northern Colorado. Last week I touched on the class action lawsuit filed in April of 2019 against the National Association of Realtors for big box agencies including ReMax, Keller Williams, there's Anywhere Real Estate, and about 20 multiple listing services throughout the country. This class action lawsuit was brought forth by sellers who felt they had unfair trade practices in the real estate industry, where they had no way to negotiate the standard commission rule 6% commission rate that real estate agencies charge, along with the National Association of Realtors, which is their standard for selling a property. Their basis of argument was that they should not have to pay a buyer's commission, which is usually split between the seller and the buyer. That 6% that sellers are charged to sell their house, 3% of that 6% goes to the buyer's agent. Their argument is, why should they have to pay a buyer's agent when the buyer is hiring that agent to guide them through the process of purchasing a home? And they have a good foundation to stand on, and legally they should be able to win this case against the National Association of Realtors, the big box stores, and the 20 MLS agencies involved. I'm going to go over how this process works for those of you who don't know. When a seller goes to hire an agent through an agency, they're going to tell that seller that the commission is 6%, and typically that's non-negotiable. Especially with the big box agencies, they want their 6%. And here, one of the local agencies, I call them the Fort Collins Mafia, if they have a buyer on one of their listings, or a buyer that comes up and wants to buy a property that's not one of their listings, where the buyer's commission is 2.5% or less, they're going to make that buyer make up that other percentage so they get their full 3% on that side. I think that's criminal. They should be able to negotiate, both buyers and sellers should be able to negotiate the commission rates that they're willing to pay their agents, whether they're going to be selling the property or purchasing a property. There's plenty of information on this class action lawsuit online. You just have to look up class action lawsuit, National Association of Realtors, or class action lawsuit, NAR. And you'll have a plethora of information, especially the updated information, where a judge in Illinois on March of this year allowed that lawsuit to move forward. Illinois and Missouri were the first two states to conjoin in this lawsuit, and there are several other states that have joined now, and sellers in those states. And this will stem back to sales going back to 2015, I believe. Now, if the sellers are successful in this lawsuit, as they are the plaintiffs, the penalties, fines will be anywhere from $30 to $50 billion. And I'm really hoping they do win, because the whole entirety of the real estate industry and how it functions needs to be rebuilt from the ground up, and it has for decades. I started dealing with the real estate industry, and actually it was January 1st of 1983 when I had a real estate agent call me. I had a construction business at the time, and asked if I would get a bid, and I would put together a bid on remodeling a gas station and turn it into a fast food burger joint, which I was successful in getting that bid, and that was my start of dealing with the real estate industry over the past 4 decades. The first 3, as a builder, the last 10, I've been leading people through its murky waters, both buyers and sellers, and educating them on how this industry really functions, essentially pulling back the curtain on the Wizard of Oz. I'm going to go over some real estate commission rates that were researched globally in 2020. Now, the highest being South Africa, which was a commission rate of 7.5%. The average sale of a property there is around $51,600. The second highest, being the US, is a 6% commission rate. The lowest was in South Korea, being a 0.55 commission rate for selling a property. Recently, I was volunteering for Open Streets as a hub manager One of the other volunteers was from Jordan. He's been living in the States since 2015. He said in Jordan, you don't even have to hire a real estate agent to sell or buy a property if you know what you're doing. So there's no commissions typically on sale of properties in Jordan based on our conversation I had with him. Now the average overall globally for real estate commissions are typically 3% on an average, taking the high and the low and all those in between. Now that's a more realistic commission rate where you would have a 1.5% split. Now if this lawsuit becomes successful and the National Association of Realtors adopts that sellers will have to negotiate for their part of a commission rate, and when buyers hire a real estate agent, they will negotiate for what they're willing to pay that agent to find them a property. Now they'll still probably get fed the same line of why they're charging what they're charging, and what the big box stores typically, they take 36% off the top of any commission before that agent gets their cut. It's quite a big business. But I'm going to go over a couple things here. I take screenshots and I have information off of social media and actually the multiple listing service too that I've seen. I followed and tracked a lot of properties from the time they've gone on the market to the time they've sold. This first one's about commission rates. This was a conversation that was coming up last year. I've deleted the names to protect those. Here it is. This is a screenshot of this conversation, and I have several more like this. So these agents are talking about commission rates and volume builders. That'll be a whole other Friday file, and I'm going to be doing many of these Friday files in the months to come. Oh no, NAR is 2.2, LGI is 2. Oakwood is a flat 1500 GVR. It's going to happen with all builders soon. Wow, that's disheartening. The last one in this chain is won't be selling their homes. So you have to ask yourself, whose interest are these people taking precedent over? Certainly not their customers. They're looking after themselves, number one, first. Ton more conversations like this I have on file. Now, last year, I was tracking sales of homes, and the average over list was around 40,000. The most I saw over list selling was about 130,000. Now, this is a house last year. Now, granted, these homes were flying off the shelf. I mean, I had never seen anything like this over 4 decades dealing with the real estate industry on the jumps of perceived property values and those willing to pay obscene amounts over and above really what I would call the purchase price or the realistic market price. Now, this was a house in Fort Collins. It sat on the market, a fairly new house, sat on the market for 180 days. Now, the buyer's commission stated in this listing was 1.5%. Granted, 180 days on the market. It expired. Shocking, right? Now, second time it came on the market, probably a few days later. I'm not going to give you details on this because I don't want people looking this stuff up. This house essentially had a new buyer's commission rate at 3%. Shocking. It went under contract in 14 days as opposed to 180 days on a 1.5% commission. Now, who are these people protecting? Whose interest are they looking after, these real estate professionals? Certainly not the consumers. This is one of the many reasons I have in a database why this class action lawsuit against the National Association of Realtors, several big box agencies, and the 20 MLS companies, I believe, will come to fruition, and the plaintiffs will be successful in this lawsuit. One thing I couldn't understand is why they were going after multiple listing service companies, and I reiterated this last time, but when our centralized showing service was bought up by Showing Time, the person that was giving us the overview on how their business model works asked how many people were members of the National Association of Realtors and how many weren't. I raised my hand because I'm not a member and I never will be. And she asked me, how do I subscribe, or how do I get onto the multiple listing service? I said, I pay my annual fees and I'm able to do what every other real estate agent is able to do in accessing properties loading properties up on that MLS service for sellers and looking at potential properties for buyers. She said she was surprised about that because the National Association of Realtors in many states will not allow, and these multiple listing services will not allow an agent to subscribe to their service unless they're a member of the club. Not interested in learning the secret handshake and the password, and based on my experience with those in the real estate industry over the past 4 decades. I am one of those what they call non-realtors. I can call myself a real estate broker because I can't use that moniker, which is okay. A flashback when I first started guiding people through this industry in 2013. In 2014, I got invited to one of these real estate soirees. I know the president very well at that time, and I was in a room of 300 of these National Association Realtor people, groups. Her opening address to these 300 in this room was, and I quote, "We polled all our former customers from the prior year. 78% said given the opportunity they would not work with the same person again. We have to do better than that." And that's my point exactly. This entire industry, the real estate industry, is built on a sales model, or I call it a sales pitch model, as opposed to really an education model. And I'd love to see that change across the board for every single person that decides they're going to get a real estate license, become a real estate professional, and guide people through this industry. It's well past due this happens. Another article that was put on by Inman, Hank Miller, he has been a contributing editor for Inman News. You can probably find the article online. It's called "Don't Be a Yes Agent." It was actually written in 2013, revised in 2014, or the title was. It was a little bit long, so they boiled it down to "Don't Be a Yes Agent." He was and probably still is, a real estate agent and an appraiser, and at that time, 10 years ago, he'd been in the industry for 3 decades, and he made some very valid points on the real estate industry, what needs to happen and what needs to change. And it's exactly what I see happening now, especially with this class action lawsuit being brought forth. The wheels are starting to spin, and business models will be changing, hopefully for the better. Anyway, next Friday, I'm going to talk about the out-of-control increases in perceived property values and what the real estate industry over the past several decades could have done to instill policies and procedures to not, or I should say, just minimize the out-of-control fluctuations we've had in real estate prices. So take care all. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next Friday. This is Casey with HomeSmart Realty Partners here in Northern Colorado. Have a wonderful weekend.